Hey everybody, welcome to another IAEI News Live. My name is Thomas Dimitrovich, and as you can tell, I'm out and about again. This is a recorded session, and I want to remind you that today, this month, is Electrical Safety Month. And today's discussion in honor of Electrical Safety Month, we're going to use this book, the 2023 code cycle. We're going to take a look at the requirements found in 210.8 for ground fault circuit interrupter protection. So for today, kicking off Electrical Safety Month here in May, let's talk GFCI protection, shock protection, and it all starts now. All right, welcome back. And I don't know about you, but I'm ready to talk about ground fault circuit interrupters. We have a lot to talk about from a GFCI perspective because a lot of things occurred in the 2023 code cycle. I'm excited about sharing those with you. All right, so to start, let's just start at the top of 210.8. So what more can we say? First of all, we changed the parent text in 210.8. We have modified language that says a listed Class A GFCI shall provide protection in accordance with 210.8A through F. That first sentence. So we did a couple things. We recognized in 210.8 parent text that a GFCI needs to be listed. Now, at the same time, we had this discovery that there's no listing requirement for ground fault circuit interrupters on panel 2. Panel 10 was having a discussion and a discovery all to their own. In 240.7, I believe it is, 240.7. 240 is overcurrent protection. 240.7 listing requirements says, the following shall be listed. Branch circuit overcurrent protected devices. Those are your breakers and fuses. Guess what? Before the 2023 code, circuit breakers and fuses were never required to be listed. Go figure. Neither were relays and circuit breakers providing ground fault circuit protection, ground fault protection of equipment. And neither were ground fault circuit interrupter devices. Now, my point in reason in going for 240.7 is twofold. One, it's to recognize, look, I don't necessarily need to tell you in 210.8 that a listed Class A GFCI shall provide protection. All I have to say is a GFCI shall provide protection. If I'm worried about the listing is picked up in 240.7. Remember, 1 through 4 apply generally. So now, what about this Class A language? Well, Class A language, let's take a look at the definition in Article 100 for ground fault circuit interrupters. Now, as I find this, I just want to say, I sit on Code Making Panel 2, and I'm giving you a little bit of the background about what happens and why we have the requirements in 210.8. But I don't speak on behalf of Panel 2. I don't speak on behalf of IAEI or NFPA or NEMA or Eaton or anybody else. What comes out of here started up there, and it all comes from here. I'm just giving you my opinion. So I'm giving you my insight based upon my involvement with the code making process as a Code Panel 2 member. So, the ground fault circuit interrupter is defined as a device intended for the protection of personnel that functions to de-energize a circuit or portion thereof within an established period of time when a ground fault current exceeds the values established for a Class A device. So in 210.8, we added a listed Class A GFCI, and I did not need to do that, by simply saying anywhere where you see the use of the word or the acronym GFCI or the word ground fault circuit interrupter, that implies a Class A device because by definition and because of 240.7 new requirements, it's required to be listed, period. I don't need to say the words listed GFCI. The moment I say GFCI, I'm implying listing. All right. So, we're 5 minutes in, and I got through the first sentence. That's a good start. All right, so what we did as well is on panel 2, we removed the informational notes in the parent text pointing us to 422.5a and 555.35f. And why? Because the NEC style manual tells us we don't have to provide pointers. Yet, panel 2, we elected to keep the informational note that points us to 215.9, which tells us I can put GFCI protection in the feeder. Why? I don't know. I don't know why we did that. We didn't need to. We removed the other 2 informational notes, but we elected to keep that. 1 through 4 apply generally. I don't need, even though it's in 215, it doesn't matter. It's a 215 requirement. I don't need to provide the pointer. We just felt it was important, I guess. I don't know. It is what it is, what it was, what it shall be. The other thing that we did was we said in the next paragraph where we say that for the purposes of this section, the distance from the receptacles shall be measured as the shortest path the power supply cord, not supply cord connected to the receptacle, would follow. So we clarified that it is a power supply cord that is plugged into the receptacle. So those were the parent text changes. Now, before I get into 210.8a and b, I have to tell you that we moved all of the exceptions in 210.8a to after the list of areas. Now, I'll tell you that did a few things for us. We had a revelation on panel 2. For example, I'll give you one example. Exception number 2, in the previous code, there was an exception to basements. Is it basements? Yes, it was exception number 2 to basements. So exception to 5 was moved to the end of 210.8a as exception number 2. Now, when we moved it, and which is a style manual thing, right? Because the style manual says it has to follow all of it has to follow the requirements. And the problem was we had exceptions to multiple sections, and they were in the middle, so it wasn't pretty. But here's what we learned: basements had an exception for 2 things. One, what they called quote unquote burglar alarm systems, and 2 were the fire alarm system. So let's talk about the fire alarm systems. In 760.41b, it says that this branch circuit shall not be supplied through a ground fault circuit interrupter or an arc fault circuit interrupter. So I did not need the exception for 760.41b or 760.121b. Take my word for it, same language is there, because it's in chapter 7. Remember, chapters 1 through 4 apply generally. Chapters 1 through 7 can modify or amend chapters 1 through 7. So if I have an exception, if I say in 760 that you shall not put this on a GFCI, then I don't care what room it's in. Think about this. This exception was only to basements. We have requirements for garages for GFCIs. We have requirements for laundries for GFCIs. What happens if I put my security system or my security system or my fire alarm system in my laundry or my garage? I would be in conflict. So we said it doesn't make sense. I don't need to make the exception apply to any specific room. Not needed. So we removed the exception, we removed the reference to basements. The other thing we did was we removed the 760 and 760.120, the fire alarm system exception, because it's already covered in chapter 7. But we could not do that for the burglar alarm system because there's no other requirements in the NEC that says you shall not put your you shall not put your burglar alarm on on a GFCI. So what we did was we didn't call it a burglar alarm system because NFPA has requirements for security systems. So we made the exception say a receptacle supplying only a permanently installed premises security system shall be permitted to omit ground fault circuit interrupter protection, not required to, not a required exception. So on that burglar alarm system, on that security system, you can still put GFCI, but you can't on the fire alarm and signaling system because 760 says it shall not be on that GFCI. So that was the change we did. So when we moved these exceptions to the bottom, we answered those types of questions. So we realized that for example, the exception for the outdoors for the de-icing and melting electric heat trace that has GFPE protection for per 426 and 427, we said, look, I don't care if that receptacle is outside or not, as long as the receptacle that is dedicated for that snow de-icing and etc., as long as it's not readily accessible, I don't care where it's at. I don't care if it's outside, inside, upside down, wherever. It doesn't matter. The location does not dictate it. It's the fact that that receptacle is dedicated for snow de-icing and it's not readily accessible. So we answered these questions by moving these exceptions down to the bottom. We also added a new exception for we added a new exception for in 210.8a that recognized that there are some exhaust fans that have a receptacle in them. And you know what happens when you have a fan like this and there is a receptacle inside that and it's in a bathroom, someone's going to say that needs to be GFCI protected because it's a receptacle. And you know what? They'd probably be right, because we never had an exception that said, well, for exhaust fans where that receptacle is used solely for the motor that goes inside that unit, okay, down here at the bottom, that's what it's there for. And it will never be used to plug anything else in because you're covering it up with one of those, okay? That receptacle does not need to be GFCI protected. And you know what I just noticed? Look at the paint on that receptacle. Yuck. Cover these things up, please. Please. That, you don't know if paint went inside that receptacle. Can we safely use that? Would I have to clean that? Am I permitted to clean it? I just don't like it. Don't do it, please. Don't do it. Be a little bit more careful. Have a little bit more workmanship-like manner. All right, so told you about the exceptions. We moved all the exceptions down to the bottom, and that happened in A and B. Let's take the rooms now. Here is one of the things that we did that is, I think, pretty significant. 210.8a6. What we said was we removed for kitchens the delineation or the narrowing of the requirement for only those countertop receptacles in kitchens. We said any receptacle in a kitchen, period. Now that's significant because remember, in the parent text of 210.8a, we removed the 15 and 20 amp reference. We say all 125 volt through 250 volt receptacles installed in the following locations and supplied by a single phase branch circuit rated 150 volts or less to ground. That's any ampere rating receptacle in that kitchen. So that hits anything that's plugged in, refrigerators, if you plug in a range, that's going to need to be GFCI protected. Any receptacle that is in a kitchen needs to be GFCI protected. Now, I'll tell you, here was our, we in our task group, we had the debate. There was one individual who argued against the expansion of the GFCI to all of these receptacles because we were talking about appliances that are plugged in. And his comment was, show me where people are actually being killed. And he did his own homework and he came back with the substantiation for this. So these electrocutions and from the Consumer Product Safety Commission database all came from that one individual who was a naysayer to begin with. But once Doug Lee from the Consumer Product Safety Commission helped him go fishing on his own, he found the data that supported the expansion. Now, where is that information? Well, I'm glad you asked. If you go to the Consumer Product Safety Commission website, Consumer Product Safety Commission, and it is cpsc.gov/data. So go to www.cpsc.gov/data. You'll pull up this page, and there are web accessibility, there's Information Quality Act. And remember, this is government data. This is what we taxpayers have paid for. So this is public information. They have CPSC recalls. They have open government PANs, recall data. We have recalls and unsafe product reports. We have civil and criminal penalty data. We have import and marketplace violation data. We have monthly progress reports, product testing and certification labs, and the National Electronic Injury Surveillance, that NEIS, that is where you want to click. When you go to the National NEISS, you'll have you'll have access to frequently asked questions, ways to access the data, and then you'll have this button down here that says Access NEISS. You click on that, and this brings up the database. You can subscribe to their recall list as well. I'm already subscribed, so I don't have to worry about it. So you identify, so I could say I'm a researcher. You can look at the year 2022. We'll look at 2022, the archived annual NEISS data, and we can say build query. You can look at the most recent 5 years or enter your own date range. We can say we'll look at the 5 years. You can say find related product codes or find product codes by filtering. If you want to say how many, I don't know, 5-year-old got hurt, how many male versus female, what parts of the body, if you're doing research that you're looking, how many hand injuries, etc. There's your diagnosis and suggested diagnosis codes. There's your body parts, available codes, disposition, group results, and whatnot. So you can hone your data, so to speak. So these are all of your available codes, whether it be home workshop, home maintenance, heating and cooling, home furnishings, general household, home maintenance, etc. You can come down here to the codes, whether it be the location on the body, upper extremities, all that good stuff. Available codes here. This is whether it's a burn, other amputation, concussions, crushing, dislocation, electric shock. So the code for that is 67. So we're going to select electric shock, and then we're going to, we're going to submit. We're going to say MS Excel, and we're going to hit submit. Oh, and we'll let that work. So this database that I'm showing you is the database that one individual used on panel 2 in the task groups that identified the need to expand the requirements to all of these receptacles because of number of people who are killed on appliances in the kitchen. A lot of it that we found were because of people who were fixing the products. So if you think about justified and energized work, there's a reason why you're doing and troubleshooting. Troubleshooting is valid, justified, energized work. And unfortunately, we were taking out homeowners, the do-it-yourselfers, other unqualified people who are just working on their microwaves, etc. And we're going to get to non-cord and plug connected shortly. So we expanded, and that thing is still searching. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm on a slow network too, so we'll just let it cook and bake, and we'll see what happens. So we expanded in kitchens to anything that's plugged in. Now, again, the challenges are going to be the open concept kitchens. For example, I'm in a hotel that has a kitchenette. It has a cooktop, so there's a kitchen. You know, what is the kitchen? There's a receptacle right here. Is that receptacle in the kitchen? Is it not in the kitchen? Where does the kitchen stop? When you get the open concept items, that does bring a gray area. So in any case, we expanded to those areas for kitchens. I'm just going to double check my query is still cooking. We're going to let it go. We'll see if it gets done. We are 21 minutes into it. We haven't got through 210.8a. So kitchens. The other thing that we added was areas. Now, this one here, quite frankly, I don't know what area in a home this really is going to impact. I'll tell you where we got the language. This language is going to look familiar. It might look like the definition of a kitchen, but it's not, because it says or cooking and not and cooking. Very important distinction. But the other thing is, you saw this last cycle in 210.8b. So we had an individual and a few individuals who made public inputs that said, why is it a hazard in other than dwelling units and not in a dwelling unit? If I had this same setup, and we give an example of a dry bar, in a living room that might have the provisions for, cutting those limes and all this other good stuff, but there's no sink. That would still need to be GFCI protected, because you're using different things there that it could be a shock hazard. Appliances. I mean, the GFCI protection that you find in 210.8 is not because the receptacle is the hazard, it's because of appliances. Right? We're not worried about the infrastructure. If we were worried about the wiring behind the walls, then we would put GFCI back in the breaker. We're putting the GFCI in these receptacles for the most part. You can put it in the circuit breaker, but you can also put it in the receptacle. We're worried about what's plugged into it, appliances. The receptacle is not the hazard. That's another point that we're going to make in this 210.8a kitchen expansion. We had the realization that it's not the receptacle, it's the appliance. Whether it be a small appliance or a large appliance, we don't really care. The small appliances are already covered because of the GFCI protection for these receptacles. So we're putting in GFCI protection in 210.8, in Chapter 2, in Article 210, because of appliances. They can fail and you can get electrocuted. It's been shown, proven to happen. So in areas with sinks, I don't know where this, I could say a dry bar, and that would be the only application I could even think of. We already talked about exception number 4. That was the exhaust fan. We already talked about that. All right, and in both A and B exceptions, we just aligned the exceptions for these types of devices that are there for like ceiling fans, etc. We aligned that language with the new definitions for what these devices are. They are weight supporting ceiling receptacles, which is this top item right here. and weight supporting attachment fittings, which are these devices down here. So those are the proper terminologies. We just aligned the 210.8 A and B exceptions that deal with those two products to use the proper terms. And I would say those are the changes in 210.8A. Remember, 210.8A deals only with receptacles. All right, now we're in other than dwelling units. So what did we do in other than dwelling units? I'll tell you what we did. We added, so we separated, remember in 210.8A, B2, we had kitchens and areas with sinks and permanent provisions for food preparation or cooking. So we took that and portion, we just said kitchens, and then we made the areas with sinks and permanent provisions for food preparation its own list item, separated it from kitchens. Two different thoughts, two different areas, and it should be two different sections. So now what we did do was we added beverage preparation. So we added areas, we said areas with sinks and permanent provisions for food preparation, beverage preparation, or cooking. So we added some clarity in that. But now, and we added beverage preparation in 210.8A7 as well. So we kept the language the same. I almost was like, oh, we better go check. So in any case, that's what we did for that. I don't think a major change. I don't think a major change. But beverage preparation would hit those wet bars, dry bars. The other thing we did was we added buffet serving areas. Areas like this. We added these areas that are now required for GFCI protection. We said buffet serving areas with permanent provisions for food serving, beverage serving, or cooking. So they're not a kitchen, okay? So we have those, that's in list item 4. And list item 7, this one here is, I think, another significant recognition of the fact that it's the appliance that is the shock hazard, not the receptacle. So what we did in 210.8B is we said sinks where receptacles or this is the adder, cord and plug connected fixed or stationary appliances are installed within 6 feet from the top inside edge of the bowl of the sink. So what we did there was we pulled in the fact that it's the appliance. If the receptacle is further than 6 foot, but the appliance is right next to the sink or within 6 foot of the sink, you're going to GFCI protect that receptacle, even though the receptacle is outside of the 6 feet, because the fixed or stationary appliance, and we can have the debate on what is a fixed or stationary appliance. That's fair game. That fixed or stationary appliance, if it is within 6 foot of a sink, regardless of where the receptacle is, it would have to be GFCI protected. Where is that going to hit? Probably your, I don't know, hotels where you have kitchens, maybe in your grocery stores, things of that nature. So I think that's a significant one. And again, it reminds us where the hazard is. It's not the receptacle, it's the appliance that's plugged in. All right, so, and the last thing that we did was we added aquariums. In list item 13, we added aquariums. We said aquariums, bait wells, and similar open aquatic vessels or containers, such as tanks or bowls, where receptacles are installed within 6 foot of the top inside edge or rim, or from the conductive support framing of the vessel or container. What is that hitting? These types of items. These types of items are those fixed and stationary items. This is in your bait centers and things of that nature. There are receptacles very near to this. In some cases, they may have aerators going on like this does. You might have heaters. I don't know. All kinds of stuff going on in those applications. GFCI protected. It's not a sink. It's not a bathtub. At least I don't think it's a bathtub. It looks like a bathtub. Maybe it looks like some bathtubs that I used to use. But in any case, you're going to GFCI protect that receptacle. It's down there in the corner. So just be mindful of that. So that was 210.8b, and we moved all the exceptions again to the end. I think that's it in 210.8b. The crawl space requirement. Remember, we had a requirement for the light that's in a crawl space to be GFCI protected. That's in 210.8c. Did not change this cycle. It's still there. We still don't have a definition of a crawl space. You'll know it when you see it. And in D, so we had a discussion in 210.8d. So remember, we're here about appliances. The argument that I've heard over the last two cycles from different individuals, either when we were doing educational programs or even at the table, we've had people make these comments. They said, look, this is what they'll do. They're going to take the cord of that appliance. They're going, in some appliances, like some dishwashers are shipped. They'll ship with a cord that you plug in, or they'll just ship that with the termination, so you wire directly to the dishwasher. And now it's no longer cord and plug connected. Now you're not required to have GFCI protection as per 210.8a. And the question is, did they remove the hazard? Simply because they hardwired it. And the answer to that is no, they did not remove the hazard. The hazard is still there. So we had this discussion. And look at that NEIS. There we go. Oh, wow. Look at that. 62 million. Oh my God, that can't be right. That is our query results for 5 years for shock. And we can go and download the file. It's a zip file. It figures. So we got a lot of data on shock protection, on shock hazards. So in any case, over that 5-year period, we're not going to go through those during this call. Sorry. Well, that data, though, was filtered through. And remember, we looked at when we did the expansion in kitchens based on the CPSC data. We found that wall-mounted ovens, electric ranges, counter-mounted cooking units, clothes dryers, and microwave ovens all had body counts associated with them. But the comment was made, what happens if these are hardwired? There's no GFCI protection required, yet the hazard hasn't gone away. Because the problem is not the receptacle nor the infrastructure, it's what's plugged into that receptacle. That's our mindset today. So, what we did was we changed the language. We said, GFCI protection shall be provided for the branch circuit or outlet supplying the following appliances: 150 volts or less to ground and 60 amps or less, single or three-phase, period. That's cord and plug connected. That is hardwired. I don't really care. And we have the list, and the list is what you see here. Now, in 422, if you go back to 422, and this is the debate between 422 and 210.8. In 422, they have GFCI requirements in 422.5. It says appliances identified in A1 through 7, 150 volts or less to ground and 60 amps or less, single or three-phase, I'm looking at 210.8D and 422.5. We have automotive vacuum machines, We have drinking water coolers and bottle fill stations. That's there. We have cord and plug connected. High pressure spray washing machines. We took out the cord and plug connected because this is not just cord and plug connected. This is about hardwired. So we got rid of the cord and plug connected. Tire inflation machines, vending machines, sump pumps and dishwashers. That's what's in 422.5. It stops at dishwashers. We added electric ranges and the rest that are underlined there because of the CPSC database, because that one individual did his due diligence and brought the data to the table, and his data that he found from the Consumer Product Safety Commission is what we used to increase the protection for this equipment. This is directly driven from blood. These are deaths that we're talking about. People who are working on this equipment. I don't really care if they were qualified or not. They did not deserve to die. So we've expanded the GFCI protection. This is for outlets, whether it be cord and plug connected or hardwire. Doesn't really matter. And that's 210.8D. So I don't know if I am able to go to the download. It's a zip file. There it is up there. Oh yeah. Okay. So there it is. Let's take a look. Whoop. There she blows. Oh boy. It's multiple files. Done. Wow. Oh. Well, we didn't get all of the data. These are the items: irons not specified, electric immersion water heaters, rotisseries. That's row E. Let's do this. Couldn't connect. Members could not connect to iCloud. Let's do edit. I wonder if I can do that. Okay, so that is the end of the spreadsheet. So I have, I don't have all the information. I got burn, electrical, dental, radiation, toasters, waffle irons, garbage disposals. Not now. I'm just looking at garbage disposers, dry heat irons, steam irons. These are all of the types of, there's gas ranges with ovens, electric ranges. So we have all of the different products that cause the faults, but we don't have what I thought we were going to have. So in any case, we'd have to go back and redo the query. I'm not going to do that. You at least know how to go fish. I told you where that's at. You can go create your own queries and take a look at the data. All right, so we have expansion for specific appliances. In 210.8E, requirement, equipment requiring servicing. That didn't change, but I'll just make a statement. 210. Remember, it says GFCI protection shall be provided for receptacles required by 210.63. So in 210.63, let's see if we made any changes there. I've already torn out a page in my book. It happened yesterday in a class. 210.63, we did make some changes. Ooh. Indoor equipment requiring dedicated equipment spaces. Where equipment other than service equipment requires dedicated equipment space as specified in 110.26E, I'm reading in 210.63B2. The required receptacle outlet shall be located within the same room or area as the electrical equipment and shall not be connected to the load side of the equipment's disconnecting means. So we try to add some clarity. Here's the problem with that one. What we're trying to get to is if you kill power, if you establish an electrically safe work condition, say that you have a panel board and say that say it's an HVAC piece of equipment, and the HVAC equipment has to have a maintenance receptacle. If I kill power to the HVAC equipment, I don't want to also kill power to the receptacle, because that's where I'm going to be using that receptacle for drills, etc. So that receptacle cannot be fed by the same circuit breaker that feeds the equipment that I'm trying to maintain. Here's where, and we haven't fixed it, but here's the problem. If I have a panel board, say in a separate building, I have an outside circuit that feeds that panel board, and let's say that that panel board needs a receptacle for servicing. How do I power that receptacle? I have one power feed going from one structure to another. That's a feeder that feeds that panel board. If I put a receptacle and I feed it from that panel board, when I turn that panel board off from the upstream overcurrent device, now the receptacle's dead. To meet this requirement in the code, I would have to pull a branch circuit from the other building over to that panel board and power the receptacle separately. That would permit me to do what that requirement states in 210.63 B2. It's challenging. I don't know the right answer. All I do know is to meet it, that's what you would have to do. So think about that one. If you have better ideas on how to solve that puzzle, I look forward to your public input. All right, so now the last section in GFCI for 210.8, and we are at 41 minutes. Yeehaw! Getting close. Outdoor outlets. Now, I'm sure you probably have heard the challenges associated with outdoor outlets. We had a couple issues. One, most prominent, which drove the TIA. There is HVAC equipment that is using the equipment grounding conductor as a current return path for single phase loads within the HVAC equipment. Violates Article 250. It's permitted by the standards. There's also HVAC equipment that is using drive technology, variable frequency drive technology, and higher frequency leakage currents are coming back over the equipment grounding conductor and causing GFCIs to trip. So what panel 2 supported was only those with the variable frequency drives that have the high frequency currents, whether they be split units or anything with a VFD. We did not support, panel 2 did not support the technical change that provided an exception from GFCI for listed HVAC equipment, because our argument was just because it's listed does not mean that it is not a hazard, number one. And number two, if you have problems with 60 hertz leakage current or 60 hertz current returned on the equipment grounding conductor, violating Article 250, don't use that unit. Don't sell that unit. There are other solutions on the market that do not do that. It's not required for energy codes, etc. The variable frequency drives, well, that presents a unique challenge from high frequencies. That's what panel 2 agreed to. This technical change was made by the Standards Council. They elected to put this in against the advisement from the technical committee to not go with listed equipment. They elected to do that. So if you have listed HVAC equipment, up until September 1st, 2026, you do not have a requirement for GFCI protection for that equipment. So you got a stay of execution, which is a good thing if you have compatibility concerns. So that exception, that TIA, is a part of the book. If you look in 210.8F. Oh, and the other thing that we did. So in addition to the dwelling unit outdoor circuits, we added Garages that have floors located at or below grade level. We added accessory buildings and boathouses. So we expanded the GFCI requirements for outdoor circuits. Now, we also added text that says if equipment supplied by an outlet covered under the requirements of this section is replaced, the outlet shall be supplied with GFCI protection. Oh, this is interesting. If equipment supplied by an outlet covered under the requirements of this section is replaced, the outlet shall be supplied with GFCI protection. A receptacle outlet is an outlet. A hardwired outlet is an outlet. It's just dawning on me at this moment that how do I handle changing out equipment that is cord and plug connected on the outside? It says in the parent text, for dwellings, all outdoor outlets other than those covered in 210.8a. So this would not be the cord and plug connected. Oh, exception number 1, excluding outlets installed in the following locations and supplied by single-phase branch circuits rated 150 volts or less to ground. 50 amps or less shall be provided with GFCI protection. So 210.8a, exception number 1, and that doesn't help me because exception number 1 are receptacles that are not readily accessible and for GFPE equipment. So, yeah, I think that's a little problematic. We got some love to give to 210.8f. All right. So that's basically 210.8. We're worried about shock protection. We're worried about being able to identify when current goes outside of the normal path. The expansion that we see in 210.8 is driven by Consumer Product Safety Commission requirements. And what else? We added some clarity. We expanded some of the exceptions. We removed some duplicate data and information references. We recognize the fact that the problem is the appliance, not the receptacle. But we measure from receptacles, and we keep keying off of a receptacle. Why? Because that device is there, that outlet for a receptacle is there during rough-in and final inspections. If I key off of an appliance in a residential dwelling unit, I may not know where my refrigerator is going to go. I may not know where my stove is going to go. Oh well. But in 210.8b, we have drawings, we have all these other great things, and we've identified fixed and stationary appliances. So a little bit of a difference there. So it's 48. We still got about 10 minutes. And what I want to do for 10 minutes is tell you about a new device that is now recognized in the National Electrical Code. And that would be the special purpose ground fault circuit interrupter, the SP GFCI. So, what is a special purpose GFCI? That is a device intended for the detection of ground fault currents used in circuits with voltages to ground greater than 150 volts that functions to de-energize a circuit or portion of a circuit within an established period of time when a ground fault current exceeds the values established for a class C, D, or E device. Now, what is that value? It doesn't say. It says UL 943C, that's an outline of investigation, tells us that that outline of investigation is what the reference standard would be for a class C, D, or E special purpose ground fault circuit interrupter. Now, where is this used? The special purpose GFCI I know is used in a couple locations. One is in Article 680 for swimming pools. Another is in the grow facilities, where we grow weed from the motherland for all that great stuff. So any case, so let's take a look at 680. 680.22. Lighting receptacles and equipment. We have receptacles. We have the required receptacle locations. You have the calculation and sanitation system circulation. Circulation helps to use these. So here's what I typically do. I put my glasses on, right, to read with, and then I look over top of them. Ground fault circuit interrupters. So 680.22A4 says ground fault circuit interrupter, GFCI, and special purpose GFCI protection. It says all receptacles rated 125 volts through 250 volts, 60 amps or less, located within 20 feet of the inside walls of a pool shall have GFCI protection complying with 680.5B or special purpose GFCI protection complying with 680.5 Charlie. So 680.5, let's go back to 680.5. 680.5 is still ground fault circuit interrupters and special purpose GFCIs. General, the GFCI and special purpose GFCI requirements in this article, unless otherwise noted, are in addition to the requirements in 210.8. In addition to, not supplementing or modifying, but in addition to. 150 volts or less to ground. Where required in this article, ground fault protection of receptacles and outlets in branch circuits, 150 volts or less to ground, 60 amps or less, single or three phase, shall be provided with a Class A GFCI. That's your 4 to 6 milliamps. Above 150 volts to ground. So this is your higher voltage. Where would you see this? You might see this in on pumps, right? Pool pumps, etc., that are 480 volts. Where required in this article, ground fault protection of receptacles and outlets on branch circuits operating at voltages above 150 volts to ground, not exceeding 480 volts phase to phase, single or three phase, shall be provided with a special purpose GFCI protection not exceeding 20 milliamps of ground fault current, trip current. The 20 milliamps is in the requirement. I, for some reason, was thinking it was in the definition, but it's not. The voltage limitations of a special purpose GFCI are in the definition, but the trip threshold 20 milliamps is here in the requirement in 680.5 Charlie. So, the special purpose GFCI is peppered throughout Article 680. You'll find it in 680.5. You'll find it for the lighting in 680.22. And I think, and I could be wrong, and I think I am wrong. Oh, yep, you'll find it in 680.32 in part 3 for storable pools, storable spas, storable hot tubs, and storable immersion pools. 680.32. And let's see, the 20 milliamps is not there because they all point back to 680.5. And where else? Oh, and here we have it in underwater luminaires in part 4. Permanently installed in self-contained spas, hot tubs, and permanently installed immersion pools. We have underwater luminaires. We have indoor installations, 680.43. Indoor installations, receptacles, and then location, and then ground fault, etc. So it's there. We also have it in 680.44. Okay, 680.43 is your indoor installation. 680.44 is GFCI and special purpose protection. General, except otherwise provided. You have listed units. You have gas-fired water heaters. So, except as otherwise provided in this section, the outlets that supplies a self-contained spa or hot tub, a packaged spa or hot tub equipment assembly, or a field-assembled spa or hot tub shall have GFCI protection complying with 680.5B or SP GFCI special purpose protection complying with 680.5 Charlie as applicable. And the applicable nature of it would be the voltage limitations. You got to understand, go back to the definition to understand the voltage scope, the voltage range, where a special purpose GFCI fits in, and then that tells you about the requirements. If you have something that's in like a 120 volt circuit or a 240 volt circuit, then you're using a GFCI, not a special purpose GFCI. And I believe, oh, we got it in 680.58. This is in your Part 5, fountains. So we have special purpose required in Part 5 for fountains. Let's see if there's any other place. That's pretty much it. So 680, and then the other location are your what do you call it? Grow facilities. So we see the introduction of a special purpose GFCI. Please read the instructions from the manufacturer to ensure you are installing those correctly. Very important that you follow the manufacturer's instructions, because there are specific instructions on the equipment grounding conductor size. There's an assured grounding, etc. So they're a little bit more complicated than a GFCI. They could be. Please follow manufacturer's instructions. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining in another fun-filled 1 hour on IAEI News Live. I don't know about you, but I enjoyed the discussion on ground fault circuit interrupters and shock protection during Electrical Safety Month. If you want to learn more about Electrical Safety Month, this is what you do. You go to esfi.org. This is the ESFI ESFI homepage. You have a lot of great information that focuses on safety, whether it be for residential or for the electrical worker. And you have home safety, you have workplace safety, you have disaster safety, kid safety, program initiatives. And look at this, National Electrical Safety Month. So May is National Electrical Safety Month, and ESFI is excited to announce the theme for the National Electrical Safety Month 2023 campaign, Electrification E-Mobility. The materials for this year's campaign explain how the rapid advancements made in emerging technology, most notably electric vehicles, require further electrification and safe, efficient devices that can support the increased energy demands. We're growing, people. Our electrical industry is more important today than it ever has been in the past. So these are all of the great resources that are available from this organization. They are free to download. Let's take a look at the lithium-ion battery safety. Look at this. You can print this out if you're an electrical contractor, if you're an inspector, if you want to just educate. If you're take them home and give them out to your family members, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, your relatives, and raise awareness on batteries. And it's Electrical Safety Month. Let's talk electrical safety. Let's spread the good news. and build a safer electrical industry. So please check out esfi.org. Get out there, take a look at the resources that are available to you. There's a resource library. There's videos out there on what, for example, what is an AFCI? Avoid non-approved electric vehicle adapters, another short video. Download downed power lines, a short video on how to safely react in these types of scenarios. Electrical warning signs, short video. So there are nice resources and videos that you can use to help educate yourself and your customers. So get out there to esfi.org. Let's make a difference together. I appreciate everything you do. I appreciate all of your attention, all of the great wishes, the thumbs up, the subscriptions. We're knocking things out of the park in regard to our videos on IAEI's YouTube site. So thank you very much for making IAEI as successful as it is. It cannot be done without you. So thank you for all you do for the electrical industry. Thank you for what you do for electrical safety, to remember to stay safe, and please stay healthy. I will see you next week on Tuesday, right here on IAEI News Live. Take care.